No alpha could win her heart until an unexpected Omega stepped forward. Princess Lyra, fierce and defiant, will not be anyone's prize, but the one she chooses might change the fate of the entire pack. The ceremonial goblet, forged from a single piece of moonstone, shattered against the obsidian throne with a crack that echoed through the Stonefang stronghold like a clap of thunder. Shards of milky white skittered across the stone floor, each piece reflecting a flicker of torchlight and the stunned face of a powerful alpha. Silence, thick and heavy as a winter pelt, fell over the great hall. Princess Lyra, her chest heaving not from fear but from pure, unadulterated fury, stood before her father's dais. Her voice, when it came, was a low, dangerous growl that every wolf in the hall felt in their bones. I said no. She turned, her gaze sweeping over the assembled warriors, each one a paragon of strength and aggression. Do you all have cloth in your ears? Or is it just the sheer size of your overinflated egos blocking the sound? This was the royal mating moon, the most sacred night for the Greymane pack. The air was thick with the scent of pine smoke, roasted meat, and the potent, competing pheromones of a dozen alpha suitors. They had come from every allied pack, Boulderfang, Ironclaw, Frostmane, each believing his raw power and battle prowess would be the key to winning the Beta Princess, the only daughter of King Borin and the future of the Greymane bloodline. But Lyra was a storm in human form. She was a Beta, a rarity in the direct royal line, and she possessed a will of tempered steel that no alpha force could seem to bend. Must I reject you all individually? She demanded, her eyes blazing. Will none of you save your pride and simply walk away? From the crowd, Alpha Magnus of the Boulderfang pack stepped forward. He was a mountain of a man, his shoulders broad, his neck thick, a pelt of a great dire wolf slung across his back. Princess, his voice boomed, this posturing is beneath you. You are a Greymane. Your blood calls for a strong mate. My strength is unmatched. I have slain a cave bear with my bare hands and teeth alone. What more could you possibly require? Lyra didn't even flinch. She descended the dais steps slowly, her simple gray gown a stark contrast to the armored finery around her. She stopped so close to him he could feel the heat of her anger. I require a leader, Magnus, not a butcher. A single wolf who fights alone is a fool, not a king. The strength of the pack is the pack, or have the Boulderfangs forgotten that ancient truth? She leaned in, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Tell me, when you faced that bear, did your courage shake? Did your hands tremble just for a second before you struck? Magnus's eyes, which had been blazing with confidence, flickered. It was almost imperceptible, a tiny fracture in his granite composure. He looked down at his own hands, as if seeing them for the first time. A faint, traitorous tremor ran through his fingers. His face paled. The memory of that primal fear, a fear he had buried deep, surged to the surface, exposed by her piercing gaze. Without another word, his shoulders slumped, and he turned, pushing his way back through the crowd, his aura of invincibility utterly shattered. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. King Borin, a grizzled alpha with a beard streaked with silver, stood from his throne. Lyra, this has gone far enough. The mating moon must conclude. Our allies will see this as a grave insult. Then let them, Lyra shot back, turning to face him. I will not be a prize to be won by the loudest bark or the sharpest claw. Next, Alpha Vorgan of the Ironclaw pack stepped forward. He was less brute force and more cunning, his fingers adorned with rings of plundered silver. He bowed with a flourish. Princess Lyra, forgive the crudeness of your previous suitors. Strength is but one tool. I offer you the wealth of a dozen conquered territories, silks from the southern lands, jewels that catch the very light of the moon, gold enough to pave these very floors. You shall want for nothing. Lyra looked at him, her expression one of profound pity. You hunt for glory, Vorgan, not for need. You offer me stolen shinies, trinkets taken from others. What use is a mountain of gold if the heart of the pack is empty? You cannot buy loyalty. You cannot purchase a future. She shook her head. Your offer is as hollow as your victories. Vorgan's smile vanished, replaced by a look of utter confusion. He opened his mouth to retort, but found no words. The logic of acquisition and wealth, his entire worldview, was meaningless here. He lowered his head in defeat and retreated. King Borin slammed his fist on the arm of his throne, the stone cracking under the impact. "Enough!" he roared, his alpha command pulsing through the room, forcing several lesser pack members to their knees. Lyra, however, stood firm, her beta spirit resisting the compulsion. "The ceremony will conclude tonight. You will choose a mate. The stability of our kingdom, our very alliances, depend on it. This is not a game, daughter." Lyra's defiance was a cold fire in her chest. She scanned the hall, her eyes passing over the remaining alphas, their faces a mixture of hope, anger, and fear. Her gaze was one of utter contempt. "Is there no one here?" she called out, her voice ringing with scorn. "Is there not a single wolf in this entire stronghold who sees beyond power and possession? Is there no one who understands that a pack needs a heart as much as it needs teeth?" The silence that followed was absolute. It was a silence of utter finality. The alphas had been tested and found wanting. The king's ultimatum hung in the air, a death knell for her hopes. Her heart felt like a stone in her chest. This was it. She would be forced to choose, to chain herself to a life of stifling tradition. And then, a movement. From the very back of the hall, from the shadows where the scholars, healers, and caretakers stood, a figure emerged. He did not stride with arrogant purpose. He simply stepped forward, his movement quiet and deliberate. The crowd parted for him, not out of respect, but out of sheer, stunned disbelief. It was KL, an Omega. He wore simple, undyed wool robes, a stark contrast to the furs and armor around him. He carried no weapons. His hands, usually stained with ink from the ancient scrolls he tended, were clean, but his eyes held a stillness that seemed to swallow the chaotic energy of the hall. He walked until he stood before the dais, his gaze locked not on the king, but on Lyra. The spell of silence broke into a torrent of outraged whispers. "An Omega? This is a joke. He dishonors the ceremony." King Borin surged to his feet, his face a thundercloud. "You, Kale, is it? You dare? An Omega has no place in this ritual. Stand down." But Kale did not stand down. He did not even acknowledge the king. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and clear, carrying effortlessly to every corner of the hall. It wasn't a growl or a command. It was a statement, simple and profound. "I claim nothing, Princess Lyra." Lyra, who had been moments from despair, felt her breath catch. She was frozen, captivated. "I do not come to prove my strength," Kael continued, his eyes never leaving hers. "I do not come to offer you wealth. I merely ask a question. Do you have the courage to build a new kind of pack?" The world narrowed to the space between them. Lyra saw the intelligence in his gaze, the deep, abiding connection to the pack's history and well-being that the alphas had ignored. He saw her not as a prize or a political tool, but as Lyra. The truth of him, the sheer, audacious honesty of his question, struck her with the force of a physical blow. It was the answer to a call she had been howling into the void her entire life. She descended the steps slowly, the eyes of the entire pack upon her. She stopped before him, searching his face for any hint of deception, of pride, of the weakness she'd found in all the others. There was none. There was only a quiet, unshakable certainty. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were warm and steady around hers. "My choice is made," she said, her voice clear and strong, carrying through the stunned hall. "I choose the Omega, Kale." Pandemonium. The roars of protest were deafening. King Borin looked as if he'd been struck. "Lyra, you cannot. This is an abomination. The other packs will see us as weak. They will challenge us for dominance." As if on cue, Alpha Magnus, his pride still bleeding from his earlier humiliation, shoved his way to the front, his face contorted with rage. "See? This is what your defiance brings, Borin. A beta and an omega? They cannot lead. They are a mockery of the old ways." He turned, spittle flying from his lips as he addressed the hall. "I challenge this bond. I invoke the right of the twin moons." A fresh wave of shock rolled through the pack. The right of the twin moons was an ancient, brutal trial for disputed matings, rarely used and even more rarely survived. "The rules are sacred," Magnus bellowed. "They must face the howling caves before the moon reaches its zenith. If they emerge from the far side, together, their bond is recognized by the moon herself. If they fail, if they become separated, or if the Omega flees in fear, he grinned, a vicious predatory sight, then she is mine by right of challenge. The stakes were absolute. The Howling Caves were not just a physical maze. They were a place of ancient magic, where the very walls whispered doubts and preyed on fears. Many strong alphas had entered alone and been broken within. Lyra's grip on Kale's hand tightened. She looked at him, expecting to see fear, but found only a resolute calm. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "We accept," Lyra said, her voice cutting through the din. The entrance to the Howling Caves was a gaping maw in the side of the mountain, veiled by snarled thorn briars that clawed at their clothes as they passed. The moment they stepped inside, the sounds of the forest vanished, replaced by an eerie, whistling wind that sounded unnervingly like distant, mournful howls. The air was cold and damp, and the only light came from faint, phosphorescent fungi clinging to the walls. "Stay close to me," Lyra said, her body tense, her senses on high alert. "I'll protect us." Kale, however, was not looking for threats. His head was tilted, his eyes half closed. "Protection is not what we need most in here, Lyra," he said softly. "The caves do not test strength, they test harmony." Almost as if in response to his words, the corridor before them shimmered. The air grew thick, and suddenly, they weren't in a cave anymore. They were in the great hall, but it was empty, covered in dust and cobwebs. The specter of Alpha Magnus sat on her father's throne, laughing. "This is what you bring us to, Lyra. Ruin. Your selfishness has destroyed the Greymane pack," Lyra growled, stepping forward, her fists clenched. "It's an illusion. Ignore it." But then Kale gasped beside her. She turned to see him staring at a different vision. He saw pack members, people he had healed and helped, pointing at him, their faces twisted with contempt. "Omega, weakling, you are not fit to stand beside a princess. You have doomed her," one of them sneered. Kale flinched as if struck, taking a step back. The real-world corridor wavered. The path behind them seemed to grow narrower. "Kale, no!" Lyra grabbed his arm. "Look at me. It's not real." His eyes, wide with a pain that was all too familiar to him, met hers. "It feels real," he whispered. "Their scorn, it has always been there, just beneath the surface. This was the trap of the caves. It found your deepest insecurity and gave it a voice. Lyra's was her fear of failing her pack. Kale's was his perceived place within it. The old Lyra, the one from just hours before, would have snarled at the illusions and charged ahead, leaving him to his doubts. But the Lyra who held his hand now was different. She saw his pain, and it cut through her own fear. She moved in front of him, blocking his view of the taunting phantoms. "Then my voice will be louder," she said, her voice fierce with conviction. "You are not a weakling. You are the only one who was brave enough to ask me to be more. You see the pack, not as it is, but as it could be. That is a strength no alpha in that hall possesses." She cupped his face, forcing him to focus only on her. "Your eyes see what mine cannot. Your senses understand what my strength cannot overcome. So guide us. I will follow." The shock of her words, "I will follow," shattered the illusion. The ghostly hall and the mocking pack members dissolved back into the damp, dark cave. Kale took a deep, shuddering breath, the doubt in his eyes replaced by a flicker of purpose. "Thank you," he said quietly. He then closed his eyes, his Omega senses reaching out, reading the cave in a way her beta aggression never could. "This way," he said, pointing to a narrow, almost invisible opening to their left. "The air moves there. It smells of moss and running water. The main path ahead reeks of fear and old blood." From that moment, they moved as one entity. Lyra didn't lead and follow. They moved in concert. When the path was blocked by a treacherous, crumbling ledge, Lyra's strength secured the ropes. When they came to a fork with 3 identical passages, Kale knelt, placing a hand on the stone. The center path hums with a low frequency. It preys on the inner ear, causing disorientation. The right path is safe. Their progress was a silent testament to their budding bond. He was her compass. She was his shield. They were proving the right's purpose with every step. Finally, they entered a vast, cavernous chamber. In the center, a shaft of moonlight fell from an opening high above, illuminating a still, black pool of water. And standing there, waiting for them, was Alpha Magnus. He hadn't just challenged them, he had cheated. He knew a shortcut. He laughed, the sound echoing cruelly in the vast space. I knew you two would make it this far. The caves do the work of breaking your spirit, but I wanted to be here for the final snap. He gestured to a dark tunnel behind him. The exit is right there, almost within reach. From the shadows of another tunnel, a low, guttural growl emanated. A massive warg, its eyes glowing with a sickly green enchantment, slunk into the light. It was all muscle and fang, drool dripping from its jaws. This was no natural beast. It was magically enraged. See? Magnus grinned. A final test. I'll even let you try. But when that beast rips him apart, Princess, you will see the error of your ways. You will need a real alpha to save you. Lyra immediately shifted into a defensive stance, a low growl rumbling in her own throat. Get behind me, Kale. But Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. Wait. Look at its eyes. It's enchanted. Rage magic. Your strength will only feed its fury. It will fight until it or you are dead. What choice do we have? Lyra hissed, her eyes locked on the advancing beast. My choice, Kyle said, his voice suddenly filled with a ton authority that brooked no argument. Keep Magnus away from me. Before Lyra could question him, Kale stepped forward, putting himself between her and the warg. He didn't growl. He didn't posture. He closed his eyes and began to hum, a low, resonant, soothing frequency that seemed to vibrate through the very air. It was the primal, calming resonance of an omega, a power rarely seen and almost forgotten, the power to heal the spirit, to soothe the savage heart. The warg hesitated, shaking its massive head as if trying to dislodge the sound. It snapped its jaws, but took a hesitant step back. Magnus saw his plan unraveling. No, fight, you cursed beast! He drew a dagger and lunged toward Kale to break his concentration. But Lyra was ready. She moved, not like a noble princess, but like a warrior of the Greymane. She didn't meet his charge. She flowed around it, using his momentum against him. She caught his arm, twisted, and with a powerful heave, threw the massive alpha to the ground. Her boot pressed down on his wrist until he cried out and released the dagger. She kicked it away, standing over him, her eyes promising violence if he moved an inch. Don't you dare touch him, she snarled. All the while, Kale's hum continued, weaving a tapestry of peace in the chaotic cavern. The green glow in the warg's eyes began to flicker and die. The drooling stopped. The beast let out a confused whimper, shook its head once more, and then, turning, slunk back into the shadows from whence it came, its magical rage broken. Kale opened his eyes, his body trembling with the effort, but his gaze was clear. He looked at Lyra, standing triumphant over the defeated Magnus, and a look of profound pride passed between them. Together, they hauled the shamed alpha to his feet and walked, side by side, out of the cave exit and into the clear light of the twin moons. The entire pack was gathered, waiting in a tense semicircle. King Boren's face was etched with worry. When he saw them emerge, not as a leader and a follower, but as partners, with their challenger as their prisoner, his expression shifted to one of stunned awe. Lyra threw Magnus forward at the king's feet. Alpha Magnus betrayed the sanctity of the rite. He cheated, and he was defeated. The trial is over. The bond is sealed. The pack was silent, looking from the resolute princess to the calm Omega, to their defeated, groveling rival. King Boren stepped down. He walked first to Lyra, placing a hand on her shoulder. Then he turned to Kale, and to the shock of everyone, he gave him a deep, respectful bow of his head. The rite of the twin moons is past, the king declared, his voice booming with a new kind of strength. The bond is true, recognized by the moon herself. Let it be known from this night forward, the Greymane pack will be led not by the strongest claw alone, but by the strongest bond. Alpha and Omega, strength and spirit, courage and wisdom, together. A single howl rose from the crowd, then another and another, until the very mountains echoed with the triumphant song of the pack, a song of a new beginning. Lyra laced her fingers with Kale's, leaning into his side. The challenge was over. They had faced the darkness and emerged not just intact, but forged into something new, something unbreakable. They were the future. What did you think of Lyra and Kale's journey? Could you feel the tension in the howling caves? What kind of rulers do you think they will become? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you were on the edge of your seat, do us a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more epic tales of love, magic, and defiance. Until next time, howl at the moon for me.